In Course 2 of the SAVE program, we've been recently reflecting and listening to teachings on the 8 worldly concerns. And so I thought I'd give some of my reflections and experiences with this topic. I think a key word here is worldly. So when we're thinking about our spiritual practice, if our mind is going into worldly concerns, that's a big red flag, at least it is for me. So there's 4 pairs, and they get slightly different names, but the 4 pairs are commonly referred to as gain and loss, praise and blame, good reputation, bad reputation, pleasure and pain. And so when I first heard these teachings from Venerable Children years and years ago, I thought, yeah, those things are problematic, but now in my life, since I've heard one teaching, and I haven't meditated on it, and I haven't really reflected on it at all, those really don't play much of a role in my life. I can see the disadvantages, but I'm immune. That's the level of my ignorance at that time. And since then, every time I hear these teachings, I get glimmers of appreciation of how I was raised with these. I was educated to function, to strive for these. Everything in my life was setting me up to shoot for these things. And in the end, of course, I thought that shooting for these things would give me pleasure, in fact, lasting forever pleasure and happiness. And when we start reflecting on these more deeply, we can see how these are a constant source of pain and suffering. So I thought today I would focus mostly on praise and just give you some thoughts I've had about that. Before I begin with praise, though, I thought I'd tell you some things that Venerable Children has mentioned about this. She says these 4 pairs, they have disadvantages because they cause suffering now and they cause suffering in the future. And in my experience, this is so. But Geshe Tegchok also says, any action motivated by attachment to these 8 worldly concerns is not dharma. It is polluted with self-centered interests that keep us bound in dissatisfaction, frustration, and suffering. So just this week, I was thinking about this word praise, and I can see how some people I can see where I was going with this years ago, thinking that I was immune to it, because the word is rather loaded, because there is some feedback that we need to give to children and each other that is constructive, that gets melded into this word praise. It gets all mixed up. So Jetsuma Tenzin Palmo has given a talk that you can Google on the internet about praise and blame, and she, the whole time in her very short talk, she used the word approval. And so if praise doesn't work for you, try investigating how approval is and what you've done in your life, starting from being a small child, to seek the approval of others. And in my case, my family used the language of praise. It's how I was raised, and they were doing their best effort, to give me feedback on what I did well. And it was, words like, oh, that's so good, you're a good girl when you do that. That's really beautiful. Oh, that's so wonderful. And you get these words, but you don't know why you did what you did to get that response. It's just sort of like, that's really great. But you never find out why it's great. And so then you think it's just me. So all of these words of praise that we've heard our whole life solidify this me that is so wonderful. And then, naturally, as a child, everything I did, I think, was searching for praise. And I sure didn't want the blame part, which will be another talk. But, I was geared from my family and in school to seek out praise. How was my day at school? Well, it was a great day if I was praised by the teacher. And it was a lousy day if the teacher didn't notice, or, that was kind of mediocre, or that wasn't so great, the work I did. And so, even as a small child, my experience in school was often so fraught with suffering because the words of praise didn't show up every moment like I needed them to. So then, as I continued learning, eventually I became a teacher. Unfortunately, teacher training has really, really grown in many, many ways. And so I spent a lot of years in university studying assessment and how to give constructive feedback to students so that they would grow. And then one time I came across this book that you may have seen. This is not a Dharma book. It's called The Inner Game of Tennis. And the author who wrote this book really made a very strong argument for the fact that praise, when you're teaching someone tennis, shuts down the learning process right now. And I can see that with tennis and with everything else we do, the moment you say to someone, that was fantastic, the learning, the potential for learning either comes to a complete stop, or everything that follows those words is we want the instructor to tell us more about how it was great. So, if you say to someone, that was a magnificent tennis serve, what does it tell the person? And then the next time they do a serve, and that was a really lousy serve. So what makes it magnificent and what makes it lousy? Nobody knows if we don't have the language to tell someone. And so early on in my teaching career, I really tried to stay away from words of praise where the person is given, that was great. And instead tell them, okay, so you accomplished that, you did those steps in the right order. Or what you did met that criteria. And so you give someone criteria for what makes something successful. And they start to understand what it is, why they do something well. And then we get, away from this praise thing, which absolutely just fuels this insatiable need for more. That's how I would describe it. The need for praise is insatiable. So we can have the experience, after we've done some reflection on this, of still being drawn into it when we're not even looking for praise. And recently, I had 2 experiences of this, which I shared with some people in the community, which I'll share with you. And I was totally blown away by the fact that I still get sucked right into it. So the first example, let's see, what was it? This particular week I had given, I think, a BBC talk, and I'd given a talk in Spokane. So one of my Dharma sisters wrote me a short email, and she said, I heard the talk you gave was great. And I wrote back, and I said, what talk? Because I didn't know which talk she meant. So then the next email that comes back is she says, oh, sorry, it wasn't you, it was Venerable Semke. Wow! So in 1 minute, it's like, what? Wait. And I wasn't looking for the praise, but still I got that feedback, and it's like, that was a pretty good talk, eh? Well, I guess all the thoughts that go in our crazy mind. So I was totally just amazed that I could get drawn in so fast and hard. And then, this was 2 days later, it was actually the same person. I went into someone's office to do something on the floor. I needed space, so I spread my stuff around. And I was sitting on the office floor for about a minute. And the person said, oh, it makes me so much calmer when you're in here. So I thought, okay. And then there was a pause. And this person said, actually, that's not true. So, I have an aversion these days to praise. I don't want anything to do with it because it messes me up totally. And what does it do? It just makes me go into this self, and it's like, I'm pretty good, It's just nonsense. So I would rather, to have constructive feedback, If the talk was helpful for someone, why was it helpful? What aspect of it was helpful for that person? And then if it wasn't helpful, where was it blurry? Where was it not clear? But I can see more and more when I look at these worldly concerns that they are just an instant source of suffering and misery, and I get all messed up, and then am I thinking of others? Most certainly not. And so it's not Dharma, it's not anything except for the self-cherishing thought. So there's one thing I'd like to read you to close. And this is from our kind teacher, Venerable Children. Something to take to the cushion. How are we going to overcome selfishness if we cannot endure a little bit of blame. So I'm going to talk about blame the next day, but you can think about that. And then she says, if we're not always working on looking to root out these 8 in our mind, the 8 worldly concerns, then we have to ask ourselves, what am I doing in my practice? And what does practicing Dharma mean?